Okay, let's talk about C Sharp programming language now. So, if we talk about C Sharp, it is an object oriented and platform independent programming language developed by Microsoft as a part of .NET initiative and approved as a standard by ECMA and ISO. If you talk about the person who was the lead in the development of this language, he was Anders Hizberg, and which has a procedural object oriented syntax based on C++, and it includes the influences from several other programming languages, most importantly Delphi and Java, with particular emphasis on simplification. So now, if we go about the history of C sharp, then sorry, my handwriting is a bit bad, but yeah. So during the development of .NET, the class libraries originally were written in a language called Simple Managed C, which is called Simple Managed C, SMC. Later, the language was named as C Sharp. Okay. Now, C Sharp principals designer and lead architect Anders has previously involved with design of Visual J++, Borland, Delphi, and Turbo Pascal languages. In interviews and technical papers, he has stated that most programming languages like C++, Java, Delphi, and other had some flaws which drove the design of C Sharp programming language. Now, if we just let me go to the next slide. So, if we say what are the design goals of C Sharp? So, design goals of C Sharp. So, what are the design goals of C Sharp? Now, it is intended to be simple, modern, general programming language. Of course, object oriented, and the language includes strong type checking, array bound checking, code portability, and automatic memory management. So, if we try to list down the design goals of C Sharp, it will be strong type checking. It will be code portability. It will be automatic memory management, automatic memory management. Then, so if we say that whom does the C sharp suits best? So people who are like aware of the C and C++, for them, C sharp should be the ideal language, or I would say the best choice, wherein they can use it for the development. And as of now, we also know that it supports for internationalization. So C sharp also supports for internationalization, and it is also suitable for the distributed, hosted, and embedded systems. So it's like a complete package in itself. Now, if we go on to the C sharp features, we know that C sharp features have been evolved from, like if we say C sharp 1.0, and then 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, and to the latest development in 2023. So if we look at all of these features, it includes features like partial classes, from which it started in C Sharp 2.0. Then it moved to in C Sharp 2. There were other features also like static class, and then it has delegates, anonymous delegates, and there were a bunch of features which we will discuss in coming session. Now, it was also having coalesce operator in 2.0, nullable value types, and then in C Sharp 3.0, there was link was introduced, link you, and also like the lambda expressions, partial methods. It evolved with C Sharp 4.0, wherein the most important was the dynamic programming and lookups, which was introduced in 4.0, which was the lookups and dynamic programming. Then 5.0, there was a better handling of null, smart case support, extension properties. Now, extension properties was a great thing in 5.0 extension properties. Other than that, 5.0 has one more major thing, which was the support for parameterized constructor in generics. In generics, there was parameterized constructor. So these were much more, I would say, advantages for the programmers to write better programming. And let's look at one or two things which will explain us in more better, uh, I would say how what the programming approaches was and how actually it moved to the development of the C sharp. So in procedural programming language, there was an approach like the collection of members like variables and functions and the members we define in program. So if you want to execute it, should be called explicitly from main function because that is the entry point of any program. However, before going to that, let me share the same example with you. So if we say that there is a void main and we have anything that we want to call like any member to, so we have to call the members from here for execution. Okay. Now, the drawback of procedural programming is the lack of security and reusability for the code. We will come to how yes, the main is always the entry point, but what changed over time, we'll come to that. Now, look at the object-oriented programming language. So, if we come to object-oriented approach, now I will say this as object-oriented approach. Herein, to overcome the drawbacks of procedural languages, and which provides security and reusability of code. It is also like the collection of members like variables and functions only. But in object-oriented language, these members are wrapped under spatial container called classes. So now class, this is the essence of object-oriented programming language that provides the security for the content of the class. Now, if we wrap our members and functions and data properties, members, if all these are wrapped inside this container called class, it provides security for that content of the class. Now, in procedural programming, we see that there are members, and in object-oriented programming, I would say OOP, we see there are members, but these are inside a class. These members are inside a class. Now, what is a class? If we are talking about object-oriented programming and we are talking about class, what is a class and how it gives security and what is basically different in object-oriented programming? So, class is a user-defined data type. Must like just like we have structure in our procedural language. So we do have structure in our procedural programming. Now this was I wouldn't say extended, but yes, uh, class has been introduced, I would say. So this class is also a user defined data type and much like structure, but it can contains like if you say about structure, so structure can only contains variables in it. Structure can only contain variables in it. However, in class, it can contain variable plus functions. So if we see that we have variables and function, so we can have copy of simple type like if we talk about variable, then it can be int, float. We can have a copy of these simple types which are called variables. Then we have a complex type like class or structure, which can have it can also contain an object here. So these are these things can be used. Now, if you want to consume all these variables of a class, so a class or structure is a user-defined data type. However, we'll have to first create an object of them. So these are and sorry, we have talked about variables here. Like these are the variables inside a class. Let's say v1, v2, and v3, and we want to consume it. These variables we have to consume, and these are wrapped inside a class, which is let's say C. So if we have to consume them, we will have to use the members. We'll have to use the uh, we'll have to use the functions of the class, and then we can consume it. Also, before consuming these members, we'll have to create an object of the class. So if this is class C1, and we have these variables here, and the functions, other functions here, so we will have to create an object of the class. Now let's suppose we say int equals to 100. This is invalid. Why this is invalid? Because any data type cannot be consumed directly. Any data type cannot be consumed directly. We will have to create copy of this data type. Now, if we say int x equals to 100, this is perfectly valid. Why this is valid? Because in above case, x is a copy of type int for which memory is allocated for storing the value, whereas it will not have any memory allocation. If only it only contains information like how many memory has to be allocated. Talking about int, when memory has to be allocated, and how it has to be allocated. Any data type, predefined or user defined, can never be consumed directly. So in case of class also, the same principle applies. Now let's use some different color because we are talking about the consumption of class. So if we talk about class, so like I have defined here, class example, and this is a collection of members. And of course, again, the void main is the entry point here too. Now here, since this is the entry point, we can create object of the class here. And if we create the object of class, using this object, we can call the members of the class. Using this object, let's say C1, we can call these members of the class. Like you say C1 dot like get data, or maybe call set data, any of the functions or members you can call here for the class. Now let's move forward. Since we have talked about the basic thing of the consumption, let's move one step ahead in the C sharp. So if we talk about C++, it suffers from a criticism that it is not fully object oriented. In C++, which is the first object-oriented programming language, comes in which came into existence, the main function is outside the class. In above example also we saw. So this is violating the rule. Violating the rule that encapsulation is not followed here. So if I would say that the per the rule of object-oriented programming, there is a rule in object-oriented programming that every every member of a program should be defined inside the class. Anything, whether it is variable or it is function or anything, it has to be defined inside a class only. And this definition inside the class is called encapsulation. In C++, we never define the main inside the class. If you see the C++, this if I go to the previous slide, we can see here that the void main is outside, and the same applies for C++. So if you see here particularly how we have defined here, so in any procedural programming language, there was the issue of the of classes. The classes were not there. Now, if we do have classes, we can have a wrapping of these members and functions inside the class. So if you see here in C sharp, I would say there is encapsulation, that is variable and functions are defined inside the class only. And if we talk about, of course, like in C++, we never define this main inside the class. It gets defined outside of the class. But why it is defined outside of the class? Because if it is defined inside of the class, it will become the member of the class. And if it is a member of the class, it should be called using the object of the class. Correct? Now, if I have defined the main function here, let's suppose I have defined the main function here and I have to call this main function. So I will have to create an object of this main of this class, and then only I can call the main function here, like something like main with using the object of the class. But object is created inside of main only. So until and unless the object is created, main function cannot be executed. And until and unless the main executes, the object cannot be created. You understand this the problem which was faced in the language where we define the main inside the inside the class. So in object so this is basically the issue which C++ actually faced. Though it being object-oriented programming language, it faced this criticism that it is not a pure object-oriented programming language. It is not a pure object-oriented programming language. Let's come to C sharp now, and let's see how we use basically here things which will help us overcome this. So before coming on to C sharp, what it has followed, I will come to that. So if you see object oriented programming in Java, how that was handled. When Sun Microsystem introduced Java, the designers of Java has taken this as a challenge. And Java language should not suffer from criticism that is not fully object oriented. So to overcome this drawback, with C++ of main, they divided the members of class into two categories. Now this is a class and we have the members here. This is divided into two categories. One is the static members and other is the non-static members. Okay. So the static member of the class does not required object of the class for the initialization or execution. So now this is the basically point which can I would say resolve this problem. So if we have the static member of any class, it will not require object. It will not require any object for the initialization, neither for execution. However, the non-static member of the class do require an object as well as non-static member of the class do require an object for the execution and initialization. So now, if you want the main method inside of the class, it must be in a position to execute without object of the class. So to make it executable, we need to define this as static. So if there is a static main, then of course it can be called without any object also. So the object of the class will not be required for the starting of the execution from where and will become the entry point of the program. Now, under the main, we can create of the object of the class and then call the other non-static function. So if we like try to uh, if we let's see how it could have been written. So it's like static void main, and inside, since since now this can be this is the entry point and this can be called without any object. So now here we can create the object of the same class, and then we can, by using this object, we can call the non-static non-static members of the class. So if we see here, since we can now call the members of the without object creation, we can now initialize and we can in fact I won't say initialize, but we can call the main function. So C sharp language follows the same guidelines of Java in writing a program. So a C sharp program also looks exactly same as this Java program with main inside the class declared as static. And this way, I would say that the problem of the initialization and execution for the entry point is resolved. However, we have a pure object oriented programming language also, which is the C sharp. Uh, let's look at some more theory which we can in next class, and then we'll continue ahead, some syntax of the C sharp classes we can see, and there's some other definitions which we'll use while defining the class. So we'll look at those and then we will move ahead. Okay.